All right, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Comics Run the World podcast. As always, I am your co-host Orion Scott Comics, aka Mateo, and as always, I am joined by
Woody, what's up? We both rocking the Superman shirt for
Superman.
Superman 85th anniversary.
Absolutely, I'm really good. We are a day late, but still, nevertheless, we will be covering everything Superman mostly in this episode. But first, as always, I like to pose this question: what are you currently reading?
I am still reading Annihilation as I was last week. I've gotten further and I have been enjoying it more and more and more. And then also because I was traveling this past weekend, I've been reading Annihilation like physically. So on my
Okay.
tablet on the plane, I finished this Warhammer miniseries. It's about this space marine Carnius Malgus, I believe, is his name. It was a little mini series that Marvel put out
Oh,
about
okay.
Warhammer 40k. I've been trying to dive into that world a little bit. Superman himself got me into the world, Henry Cavill.
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely.
so it's only fitting that I talk about it today. But it was I gave my low rating because I finished it on the plane. Right, it was short. It was like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was really good, but kind of basic at the same time. But the
Yeah,
world is really violent and gritty and really cool.
yeah,
It's really
yeah,
cool. So yeah,
yeah.
but
I'm
still
on.
reading Annihilation. What about you?
Right now I'm reading Annihilation Conquest.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's gonna be a future video, podcast episode for sure. But just to bounce off of that, Henry Cavill Warhammer 40k. I'm like in the exact same boat. I was like, I kind of want to check out this Warhammer 40k universe because like it looks cool. Henry Cavill's cool and he plays it all the time. So I was like, let me give it a shot. And it's a lot of lore.
Yeah.
It's like like the most densely packed like lore like things in like fiction. It's crazy.
I
But
there's a video game coming out about where you're a space marine that looks
yeah,
badass, and I think I want to get into it, but it's something that will be very gradual because it's both expensive and time consuming. Is the uh I don't want to call it board game, table game.
yeah,
It looks so much fun, but it looks like a big commitment. So I think I'm gonna very, very slowly try and see if it's something I'm into, and start dipping my feet in the figures and painting them. And
yeah.
it looks a lot of fun, but it definitely looks like I got to
Mhm.
make sure I'm into it because it's expensive and it's time
Right.
consuming. Yeah.
Yeah. The same exact thing for me, especially with like the painting part. I know if I do get into that level, my painting of like the Marines or whatever, it could be atrocious. So I'm gonna be terrible at painting it.
Okay, I thought the same thing too, but I've been watching a lot of videos. I love to watch YouTube videos while I eat.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I feel like it's number one, not as hard as you have it pictured in your head. And number two, it'd be something that would also be therapeutic, but
Yeah.
you'd get better at it because what I was afraid is like the details, like painting a little like
Yeah. Because people go hard on the details.
but so like if you for the Space Marine, he painted the whole thing blue
Mm.
and then he shows you how to detail it and it's really you can kind of like do detailing but not as like hardcore as like some of like that
Yeah.
really and it'll still look really good if that makes any sense. Like it's better if you're watching the video. Obviously, I'm not going to be great at explaining it, but it's if you watch a video, I think it'll ease your mind and you'll be like, okay, like maybe I can do this. And
Definitely.
it just looks like if you got like a good friend to play against, and it's also really community driven, which I love.
Hmm.
Like my
Yeah.
comic shop has Warhammer 40k days where they'll like play each other,
That's cool. That's
and it'd be
awesome.
a great way to like meet people and um. So yeah, but it's a big hobby. So
Yeah, definitely. Like I want to get into it, but like I don't really know anyone who plays 40K. I know people who play D&D. So I feel like if I start off with like doing D&D, I kind of get like a more
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like they're the same like type of tabletop board games. I don't think so. But
Traditionally, no. But
yeah,
dude, I've really been like watching videos.
yeah,
You can so they've got you can do a game that's like it's just like war and strategy, but there's also a version of Warhammer that's similar to D&D where you name your specific characters and if they get a bunch of kills then they rank up, and that one's
oh,
kind of
okay,
more of like a role playing version of the game. That
right,
version seems really interesting to me. Um but the world is what got me. It was Henry Cavill, and then the
yeah,
world. That's
yeah, because like whenever it comes to like finding a new niche, I guess, because obviously comics run the world. We talk about comics all the time. I love learning about like the history. Like whenever there's like a history of things like Marvel or DC, I always like love reading like how it got to the point to where it is now, what happened in the past that I don't know yet. I just like love learning those like the history of and like how things became the way they are right now. And in the case of 40K, I like spend in class. I don't really pay attention in class, and there was one day where like I was in my astronomy class, and I just sat there, pull up like the 40K wiki, and was just like like reading like the whole like a good chunk of the lore, and like what I mean by a good chunk, probably like a fraction of what it is, because there's a
yeah,
lot of lore, and then there's a lot of tabs about specific space marines, the other was it the other factions there are in the 40K universe. There's also a fantasy version of 40K, the original 40K, not 40K, Warhammer.
yeah,
There's a Warhammer, but like I read that like the people who made Warhammer kind of messed up um, the quality of that version of Warhammer, so no one really pays attention to that anymore. And now it's like 40K now, so it's something definitely that I'm easing my way in because it's very very dense. Like you said, it's very expensive,
yeah.
time consuming. So I kind of just want to, instead of going full head on like I usually do, I like to look at it and then I take it like bit by bit by bit.
The miniseries I read is a good read because there were parts where I was kind of lost, and um, well, not and, but like as you read, you kind of piece it together a little bit, and by the end, there's also specific pages that just have lore dumps. It's just like
Yeah.
just lore, and then you kind of learn as you read it. There's this separate faction. They're like Space Marines, but they're like kind of like darker and evil. I already forgot their name, but um, it's a fun read. It's a Marvel comic, and it's got a ton of blood and gore. Like they allowed them. I hope that Marvel keeps making Warhammer comics because this one it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also like, I know there's like a lot of YouTuber channels that like are like centered in like in this format where like they like make videos like 30, 45 minute long videos explaining everything, but they put it in like bite-sized pieces and like a playlist. So that's also another way that I like to like ingest all of this knowledge.
Yeah,
Um but I'll definitely check out the series because I've seen it on Comixology before, and I'm not a fan of the artwork. I do have to say the artwork doesn't really like grab me. But now that you said you read it and it's like basic but still good, I'll probably have to check it out after I finish Annihilation Conquest.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna read from Annihilation straight to Conquest. I'm gonna be reading like all of that in the span of like a week. I've got a
Nice.
lot of free time, and
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Awesome. And with that being said, we are going to be covering. You guys checked out the last video, the last week's episode. We did a wheel of what comic miniseries to read for today's episode, and it landed on DCeased. If you guys don't know what DCeased is, basically Marvel zombies, but DC and better, in my
But better,
opinion.
but better,
Better, so much better.
but better.
um, did you want to give like the overall synopsis of what DCeased is?
Yeah. short and sweet. It's basically Darkseid. Darkseid pretty much unleashes this zombie virus, if you want to call it that. Although it is not a zombie virus. I guess we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But um, he unleashes it through Cyborg, basically, and Black Racer, which it was a character I did not know. And it is the way it's what's the word? Not transfused. The way you get the disease, or not the disease, but the way you get it is either through a technology screen or by bite,
Yeah.
and it pretty much basically destroys the world. And this whole comic is just about the DC heroes fighting against it. It's not really even them trying to find a cure. It's just them trying to save the world, and yeah. So
Yeah.
I would like to start off with kind of how it begins and how, because I like, in a broad sense, understood it, but I also kind of didn't. Did you kind of like basically how the disease starts, what Darkseid does? Do you have a better grasp of what
Yeah.
happens? Because
So base
I didn't know who
base
Black Racer was, and yeah.
okay. You come to the right person. Uh, so Black Racer is essentially death. Um and like he's basically death. And when Darkseid invades Earth in the very beginning, um, he says like he's not gonna come back to Earth because he got what he came for, and that's basically Cyborg. And they believe that the rest of the anti-life equation resides in, I think he said, either in Cyborg or in humanity, but like still in Cyborg's system.
Yeah, the anti-life equation was in Cyborg's system. That, yeah.
Okay. Um, but there was something off about it, I think. So they summon death, and they kind of fuse death and the anti-life equation, and it gets corrupted. And then obviously, if you guys saw in the beginning, it just turns Darkseid absolutely crazy. He throws himself into like the fire pits of Apocalypse, and he blows up the planet essentially. And before that, he sends Cyborg off to Earth, and then from there, that Cyborg being connected to the internet, the virus was able to transmute all over the planet via technology and screens.
Yeah, it becomes like a different equation, right? Like
Yeah,
it changes the anti-life equation and fuses it with death. It becomes a different equation. Um, that was one part I really loved about the comic, was like it's not just a zombie virus. It's not it. It like actually makes sense. It doesn't just feel like an excuse for them to make a zombie DC story.
right.
Like, it's actually not zombies. It's the anti-life equation fused with death, and the reason they can see it on the TV screens is because it's within Cyborg, and he's part machine, part human. So the bite part is his part human. That's why it can be like transferred through bite, and the screen is like his machine side. And that's why it's being like shown across screens all over the world, which
Yeah.
obviously would infect almost everyone instantly.
Yeah, definitely. And what I liked about that part is, I might be wrong on this because I barely read Final Crisis because of how difficult it's how difficult it is to understand. But in the story, basically, like Darkseid has the anti-life equation and takes over the planet or the universe, whatever. And the way he disperses the anti-life equation is the same way they did and like how to disperse the death equation and DCeased through screens and like stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Um, but yeah, it starts out quick, and like it's not a gradual takeover of the. If I mean, the only thing, it's tough to not call them zombies
Yeah.
because they basically become zombies, but like it happens pretty much instantly, and the world's like taken over by zombies in like the snap of a finger, basically.
Yeah. And the the thing I like about this is, like you said in the beginning, how like they're not really trying to find a cure because of how quick everything's like spreading and how quickly the world is collapsing. They're just trying to find a way to survive. And get to their loved ones, and we see a lot of heroes die. A lot of sad moments happen in this story.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. It's tough. It's the thing that really was like a scene that like a part in the comic that really had me was like the end, where like the solution was so obvious, and it's gone now.
The one person that was trying to find a solution and probably would have found it dies pretty quickly, which also we're going to talk the whole thing spoilers, which is
Yeah,
Batman.
and yeah,
Dude, and like he's like actively trying to find a solution. And in my head I was like, cuz that's the one thing I'll talk about at the end that I love about this comic is it's not connected to anything. So like truly anyone can die, anything can happen here. Like it's not like, oh, Batman's going to live cuz he's Batman. Like
yeah,
Batman dies pretty early.
yeah.
Um how did he get infected again? Was it I
I
forget if he says or not.
I think it was. Oh yeah. He starts hearing something in the kitchen in Wayne Manor, and he sees that's Nightwing and being affected, and then like I think
I forgot
Nightwing like
the
claws him or something like
page.
that.
Yeah, I forgot the
Yeah,
page. I actually remember that vividly, but at the time when I was reading that specific page, I didn't know it could be transferred through Byte. I thought it was
yeah,
just screens because I knew it was the equation. So I thought, oh well, like maybe he'll be okay, but no. He,
yeah. It sucks, and continuing on what we liked about the story, I liked how he tried to slow down the takeover essentially by being in Mr. Freeze's suit,
yeah,
and like his whole like like saying like stop he says this is literally and not the time to like start like to mourn or something like that. And he's
yeah. I
saying,
think
and then
Superman. I think he tries to say something.
yeah, and what a part I really like was him talking to Damien, and like how he's giving him like his own bat suit essentially, and just like how like he wished he was there and wish he could have told him sooner that he was more than ready to take up the mantle of Batman.
Yeah. Does he? I can't remember. Does he tell? Does he say that to Damien, or does he tell Alfred to say it to Damien? I can't remember exactly.
I think it was through like a walkie-talkie thing
Okay.
that um and then like obviously Batman transforms, and then Alfred says he just shoots him.
Dude, and
It's hot. It's tough, man.
Alfred has to look over the dead bodies of Robin, Nightwing, and Batman.
Yeah,
And he says he's like my boys, or he's like I can't remember what
yeah.
he says.
It
Um,
was it was tough.
yeah, like it doesn't pull any punches, and it gets worse with all that. I mean, we see the scene with Hal and Black
Oh yeah.
Canary and Green Arrow.
Hmm.
That part, while kind of sad, was also badass because Hal is just not holding back because he
Yeah.
gets infected by. They're like camping, and he looks at a phone screen, and they're like, "What's going on in there?" And then he
Hmm.
just like
Explodes.
unleashes.
Yeah. And to
That part
go,
was
yeah, and to go on like that whole scene, or like even before Hal transforms, I just like Green Arrow in this story because he's like he's so funny,
yeah,
and like in that scene where it was either Black Canary or Green Arrow who were like making fun of how for being so easily pressured into doing something, and how and like making fun of it, saying he's weak willed,
yeah. He's
and
like, "You're
then
supposed to be strong willed."
yeah, and then Hal's like, I'm literally known throughout the whole universe about how strong my will is, and then they're like, okay, well, yet you're here, so it's
yeah,
okay. He's great. He has a lot of good moments, especially towards the end. Was probably one of my favorite moments.
I already know which I have that written down to talk about, dude. That part. Might as well talk about it. Like at the end, Aquaman's infected, and he's Aquaman is just riding the Kraken.
Yeah.
And before this, um, we basically hear about like Batman's. Someone brings up Batman's contingency plan. I think it might be about Superman,
Hmm.
about how he has a plan of how to kill each Justice League member. Green Arrow's like, what's the plan for me? And they're like, oh yeah, Batman doesn't have a plan for you. He's like, what? Batman didn't think I was dangerous. And so like when Aquaman's riding that Kraken, you just see an arrow go straight through Aquaman's like eye, basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, Batman didn't have a plan for me. He's like, I just put an arrow through his eye, like through these storm winds and all this. That part was great.
Yeah, and at the end he just says like "fuck you, Batman."
Dude,
it,
that part was so funny.
it's a great, just a great character in the story overall. Another part that I really liked, that it's a part that I always found funny, even though I don't think it was intended to be funny. And if you guys already been watching the podcast, there's a lot of things that are not intended to be funny, which I find hilarious.
Okay.
It was in the one shot, the Mr. Miracle Big Barda one shot, where
I
they're
didn't.
get.
That wasn't in my or the thing I read digitally.
Oh really?
I don't think so.
Oh damn! No, like none of the John Constantine stuff.
No.
Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, nothing, none of
No,
that.
no, 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 no.
Oh
No.
no! So there's a whole thing. It's like a 40-page one shot about basically it was Big Barda, Mr. Miracle, Booster Gold, Ted Core to Blue Beetle. Who else was it? I know John Constantine was there as well. They're trying to find like a solution to like how to stop all of this. Essentially, I'm going very broad and vague about this, but essentially, they go to a time machine and try to get Booster Gold to go back in time and stop from this happening. Things happen. It doesn't go out the way they planned it to be, and basically their plan fails. But before basically everyone dies in that, is it the Dr. Fate and Zatanna come like appear and say like, you had like to John Constantine, you have to come with us. There's something else that's awaiting you, like another fate's awaiting you, essentially like that. And then so they get pulled away. I assume it's talked about in a different spin-off series for DCeased. But yeah, that's basically what happens. I feel like something else happens in that's crucial. I'm just blanking right now. But in that one shot where Big Bard and Mr. Miracle meet John Constantine, let me see if I can pull it up. So basically, John Constantine kills his best friend because he turned into a zombie, and then after that, they Big Bard and Mr. Miracle appear before him, and John Constantine asked, "How's your day going?" And then Mr. Miracle says, "My entire planet was destroyed." And then John Constantine says, "All right, it's not a competition." I thought that part was. I always loved that part because I thought it's so funny, especially the first time when I read DCeased when it was coming out in single issues. I remember just dying laughing at that for no reason. So like
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
funny.
it's like the stupid things that I always find like funny. But that's one of my favorite parts of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they did a good job because, like we're saying, it's a serious story, but they put comedy in at certain points, and it's like it's well used. Like it's not over the top. It's just some quick comedy moments, and they're fun. They're actually funny, and yeah, it's just not over the top with the comedy.
Yeah.
It has its moments while still being serious, and yeah, I thought they nailed that aspect. My funny enough, I know we're about to talk about Superman with the 85th anniversary because my favorite character in the story was Superman.
Mm.
With, I mean, he had so many great moments, like when he's at the planet and he's in the middle of like both saving people and kind of getting the zombies out of the way, and
Yeah.
he's like, I can't look at them as colleagues or friends. He's like,
Yeah.
I can't, like, I've got to save the people that are still people, and I've got to basically kill or do whatever. He's just going in there at super speed because he's like, they aren't people anymore. And then the scene of him and Pa Kent, um,
Oh. Yeah.
that I don't know if it's my favorite because then when he gets infected, like that
Yeah.
part,
That part was crazy.
and that all happens so fast. But that part with Pa Kent was just so sad because like, but it that's after the scene when he's like, he's like, I can't see them as people. But when
Yeah.
he sees Pa Kent, like he's like holding him too. He can't even like
Yeah,
bring himself to kill him, and he puts him like in this little bunker almost, and seals the lock and like doesn't kill him. He just can't bring himself to do it.
yeah. That scene was tough. Um, Another thing that I liked about Superman in this is the fact that like he's not like looking at anything though like normally. He's like he switches his vision to like X-ray vision, which I thought was like genius.
That
And like
was
that's another part I liked.
yeah, it every time I feel like I had a question, or even the people like the characters in the comics, it felt like it was answered. Like this world felt very realized and everything felt
Yeah,
thought through. Like
yeah,
because they ask him that, they're like, "You're too dangerous. Like if you see one screen, you'll kill the whole world." And that's why he says that. He's like, "Don't worry, I'm only looking through X-ray vision."
hmm yeah. It's like the one thing I like about like how the story was written, how like it's like you said, thought through. I like how fast paced it was, and I like how they didn't hold anything back. They choose who was going to die and what manner they were. I liked the fact that even before they had to evacuate the planet as a whole, they already had established sanctuaries. Like I think it was in Gotham with like Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, like basically like a jungle area, and the what was it Themyscira. I like the scene where like they literally pushed up like the tectonic plates of or like around Themyscira to make more land mass around it.
Yeah,
I forgot what why they had to leave the planet. Was it because of Superman being affected that they had to leave the planet?
I think I think they were pretty much leaving anyways. Like they were, I think it was like part Superman, and then also, I mean, all the Atlanteans started to come
Yeah,
to um through the wall, because once they lifted it, obviously anyone could come through. So there's a badass battle between the Amazons and the infected Atlanteans,
yeah,
and the Amazons just stay down there and let the refugees leave and just like let themselves die slash be infected to save the people of the world, which was so cool. But yeah,
absolutely.
I think the refugees, I don't remember what makes them like start doing it, but it's probably a mix of like Superman being infected, and also I think
Just like and they're doing it anyways.
yeah, because I think the world was just kind of
Yeah,
toast.
yeah,
Um,
basically. To go on another thing about one of my favorite characters in it was Lex Luthor, and I liked how in one part of the comic, Captain Atom gets infected and he basically explodes and destroys three cities. It was at Washington D.C., Baltimore, and
Metropolis.
Metropolis. Yeah, and being from Baltimore, like right now, that would suck if that's something like that happened. Um, but it was this thing how in like the and then like the narration, it says like it's weird how like how survivable cockroaches are, and it's just like it's like right above Lex Luthor,
Yeah, because like
and like
everyone in the city's pretty like they're all
yeah,
dead.
yeah, and like Superman's like about to like to like they're obviously enemies, and Superman's like scowling him, saying like, "What did you do?" And then like, but like Lex Luthor stops and say like, "Look what happened to our city," and like it's just like flattened. There's like nothing left of it. And another part where I liked was I have a screenshot right here is that they're discussing the arcs to leave the planet. So Lex Luthor says the arcs will fit 7 million people. Superman says we're not leaving. And then Lex says, Superman, I am the most intelligent person on the planet. And wait, Batman's dead, yeah? And then Cyborg says, yes.
Yeah.
And then Lex says, right, then I am the most intelligent person on the planet right now. And I'm telling you, the world's over. It's inevitable. So I thought I like that part where he has to double check that Batman's dead, so just to make sure that he is in fact the smartest person on the planet. That's another unintentionally funny part that I liked.
That was definitely intentionally funny though. That like that's really funny. And then
Yeah,
right after that, there's a great part where like and also we kind of just answered our question. That is when they start talking about like
yeah,
leaving the world. But there's another great part where Lex is like, "Wow, you're gonna let another world die." He's like,
Yeah, that was cruel.
and then Lois like she like punches him.
Yeah, and he's like hunched over too. So
Yeah,
she punched him
she.
hard.
But that part, dude, that like, ooh, that was kind of a good one by
That was a yeah, got him good.
kind of got him. And
uh,
then the part with Martian Manhunter right after that, just
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I keep I, I and like I read this is like my third or fourth time reading Deceased, and each time I keep forgetting that Martian Manhunter like just like surprises them, and like it's because like he's like huge, like monstrous, and like starts like killing everyone. It's crazy. It's like a really like crazy, like unexpected scene that happens in the Fortress of Solitude. It's crazy.
And they don't feel like just plot changes just for the sake of the plot changing. Like everything, it just feels very natural. Like because they even say they're like, we thought we were safe because that was when there's the place in Gotham with it's the Green and Poison Ivy and like you're saying Themyscira, and then at the Fortress of Solitude, that's where all the heroes get together and that's where they're planning. And they're like, we thought we were safe, we thought everything was good, but we forgot about. And then Martian Manhunter comes in and like just starts killing
Yeah,
almost everyone. And after that, because like when I was reading it, I was like, okay, they might actually like pull this off because that's all the heroes together. They're planning it out. But after that, that's when shit just kind of hits the fan because
yeah,
he infects the Flash, and then Superman does this awesome thing where the Flash is running and Superman flies and meets him and just flies through him, killing
yeah,
him. But then Superman gets infected because like his fingers get stuck in his body, and that everything just kind of unfolds from there.
yeah. Um, it's crazy because like whenever you feel like the heroes are gonna succeed, there's something that like sets them back a lot. And like you said, it doesn't feel forced. It's like natural. Everything's planned. Like it feels like it's planned out how it should be. Um, it's great. Honestly, I think it's a really good writing thing. Tom Taylor, who wrote this, did a really good job in my opinion. I read some of his other work. I did read the first two trade paperbacks of Nightwing, which I thought was really good. I know he did Uncanny X Force and X-23 Wolverine, all new Wolverine, I think. So he's a really consistent writer in my opinion, from what I've read at least. He also did like a short Suicide Squad story, which I really liked. Um, but overall, I love the story. Was there anything that you didn't really like about Deceased?
I also I will say about the story before I answer that. I think a story is at its best when it doesn't feel like it's a story, if that makes any sense. Like it
Yeah.
just feels like these events are happening because they're happening. Like that's
Hmm.
just like I never felt like I was reading a story. It just felt like I was in this world. Like it just felt like a real place. And that's when I think a story is at its best. But my right at the very end, I don't I'm very mixed on how I feel about it. So what happens is Wonder Woman gets infected, all the refugees are taking off, and it's Wonder Woman and Cyborg. And he puts the lasso of truth around her and makes her speak. And basically, like this equation, because they're not zombies, had a voice the whole time
Hmm.
and explains the cure was like, what was it? It was inside Cyborg, or it was
Yeah, but it's basically an off switch. Like he could have just said like off, and like it would have stopped.
okay, yeah. Um, while I think the purpose of that was just to make things even worse than they already were. Like all of this happened, and it was just you could have fixed it. And I
Yeah,
think that part is really awesome. Like because, like I said, it just makes things worse than they already were. But I also thought it was kind of goofy that that the equation had a voice and it was like
yeah,
talking through Wonder Woman, and of course, like he's like, "Oh, I can do something about it," and then she snaps his neck. Um, like while I think that's cool, like just making a worse situation already worse, like showing you how easy it was, and also he has it and she just kills him. I at the same time thought it was goofy that she was talking but I don't know. It's like both cool and goofy to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but I just didn't personally love the choice. What was your
Yeah.
least favorite part?
Um.
And I guess what
um,
did you think about what I just talked about too?
I don't think I have a least favorite part. Um, per se. I really liked this story. I guess not just to say not to say this is like a bad or my least favorite part, but like I thought it was interesting how at the very end the Green Lantern Corps basically puts Earth on quarantine and seals it off from the rest of like the universe. Um, I thought that part was interesting. And to reflect on what you said about the voice, um, I didn't have a problem with it, but I do understand how it can come off as goofy, because it's like it's one of those things where like it didn't really need to have like a voice or need to be sentient in a sense. Maybe they like talked or like touched upon it again in like other uh miniseries in the deceased universe, but I do see like where you're coming from with like it just feels goofy because like it seems like one of those things where like they just make it talk and like just for the sake of like plot, I guess, or like just for the sake of having a voice in a sense.
Yeah, it felt like it was trying to be like show you how easily it could have been reversed, and then right as he's maybe about to try and do it, kill him.
Yeah,
Like maybe if I guess if I was writing it, I would have had like Cyborg somewhere like looking, like inside of stuff, realizing it, and as that happens, like Wonder Woman bite him, or I don't know. But I also didn't like hate it though. Like it
yeah,
wasn't. It's not that I really disliked it that much. I just thought like it's kind of weird that she's talking
hmm,
through the. I mean, it's almost like the equation was talking. But
yeah.
what was your absolute favorite part?
Oh, I gotta say, we already talked about it, but my absolute favorite part was basically Green Arrow showing Batman from the grave that like he can be uh of what was it? He said like in a multiversal threat, and then he showed Batman like, yeah, I can. I just did that. I can be a threat. Fuck you,
Yeah.
Batman. That's gotta be my favorite part, or it's like or like any part where Green Arrow's in it, because I really like them in the story.
Yeah, he was really great. My favorite part is kind of two scenes in one. It was when Superman gets infected, um, and he talks to Lois, Ma Kent, and John.
Yeah.
And dude, I was in an airplane while reading this. I swear, dude, I started to like well up. Like he's like telling John, he's like, "You're the best thing that's ever happened in this world," and like,
Yeah.
and then the two in one that I'm talking about is when Superman gets infected. This scene too. Like they see Superman flying, and they're like, oh, they're like looking up hopeful, like the people that are still normal,
Yeah.
and then he just comes down on this building, like goes straight through it, explodes it, and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
But the scene when John's like, he's like, I got this, mom. He's like, I got this, and he meets Superman, like Superman's flying, and just like flies straight into him, and I don't know if it's the narration or Lois, and someone's like, like he's exactly who Superman thought he was, like he's just like his dad or whatever, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's it's so it's so great, and it just
Yeah.
shows how like hopeful not only Superman but his son is, and was it was some good stuff.
Definitely. What would you rate it out of 5?
Out of 5, I'll be giving my first ever on the podcast 5 stars.
Yeah. Let's go.
5 stars. I haven't given anything that yet, but it's my
Awesome.
first 5.
I would also agree. I will give it a 5 stars. I love the series. I did read, and I do have Deceased Unkillables, which was the first spinoff from the first story. It's not bad, and the way I say it makes it sound like it's like meh. It's not meh. It's a good story, but like comparing to Deceased, obviously it's gonna be like number 2. But it's interesting to see because I won't give it too much away, but like you get a perspective of like who gets left behind essentially, and like what they do on the planet and like how they survive, which
Yeah,
is really cool. I know there's another. It was released digitally only, I think, but they just collected it in a collected format like sometime this year. I forgot what it's called, but I think that one's 15 issues long. Um, so I'll definitely have to check out the rest of the series. I don't know if they're doing anything new with DCeased,
I think
but I
they did not that long ago when I was still buying single issues. They were coming out with something. I think they still are doing some kind of spinoffs.
I really hope it's not the case where like it's successful and then did it just um
Just goes too
overseas is
far.
welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
overseas are welcome. So here it is. So there's Deceased Unkillables, which I just said it's issues number 1 to 3, so it's only 3 issues long. The digital run was it's 1 through 15. It's called Hope at World's End, and then the sequels are Dead Planet and War of the Undead Gods. So it's a lot of there's like 5 in total, I guess, spinoffs, including the one shot I was talking to you about that you didn't read. I recommend reading it. It is really good, but I do want to read the spinoffs and the sequels just to see like how it ends essentially because I'm so curious
Yeah,
because
I mean, me too.
it could have easily ended off there, but
Yeah.
I guess they just want to make more out of it. I hope it doesn't like just go off the like the deep end and just like dips in quality.
If I was
Um,
to see a sequel, I would like to see more of like like them leave the zombie stuff and see them try and repopulate on some new world because they're
yeah,
gonna refugee to a new world. That would be interesting to see.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but to I guess the final thing I'll say to go along with my 5-star rating is like one of the things I'll probably say this a million more times. Like one of my favorite things about comics is when they're a beginning and end story. Like it's the best way I can
Yeah,
describe it. It's my reason like that I love a lot of the new 52. It's the reason I love Invincible. It's the reason I love Ultimate Spider-Man. Like when a story is fresh and new, it's another reason I love reboots. A lot of people
no,
hate
really.
reboots. I love
Hot take,
reboots.
hot take.
Hot take. And we'll eventually have a hot take segment where I'll go farther into that, but I just love, like cuz I was like on the edge of my seat cuz you don't know, anyone could die, like anything could happen, and
Yeah,
I just love, like brand new worlds, brand new stories that, like All-Star Superman's another one. It's not connected to anything. So that
yeah,
was one reason I love this. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
yeah. I agree, especially with the stories having a beginning and end. Controversial opinion here. Whenever it comes to like those like the detective comics, action comics, or where like the beginning and end is basically like a story arc. Um, I like those, but then like you have to know what happened beforehand, and like it's like a long running series, and I just like, and that's kind of like what kind of why I like independent comics more because there's a definitive beginning and definitive end, like you said with Invincible. Even though it is like, what was it 300 issues more or less?
Yeah.
It's consistently good. There's a lot of good substance in it. I know there's a spin-off. There's multiple spin-offs from the Invincible universe, but they don't overstay their welcome. Um, that's another thing why I really like this story because beginning and end. And I'm really hoping they don't keep making the C spin-off and like ruin the whole thing.
Yeah.
If they haven't already.
I'm They might, but even if they do, it won't take away from this specific
Yeah,
miniseries.
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So that was our review on DCeased. If you guys want to check it out, definitely check out your local comic book shop, see if they have it. They probably do because it's everywhere in it. They're in all comic
Deluxe
shops from what.
hardcover in October. I'm buying it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
buying
make
it.
sure to buy it, pre-order it, whatever. Make sure to check it out in your local comic book shops. If you don't have a local comic book shop, make sure to buy it on like I don't know Amazon from the DC website, or just read it digitally on DC
It's free
Universe
on
Infinite.
Free on
And
Comixology.
yeah, and it's free on Comixology if you guys have that. Definitely check it out. And then to segue this, we're going to talk about Superman. Since yesterday, at the day of this recording, yesterday was the 85th anniversary of the Man of Steel. And I kind of want to open this discussion of Superman by asking a pretty basic question. What was your first introduction to Superman?
I could be wrong about this because I mean that's tough for me to answer because my dad was a huge Superman fan and I was always kind of around Superman, so I'll say the first time I really like remember getting into Superman myself was the Superman animated series. Um I know I was around I probably had read random Superman comics before that growing up that were just around the house, and I probably had some. I think we used to have a Death of Superman trade. So it wasn't the first time I had gotten into Superman, but it was the first like real when I really got into Superman was the Superman animated series back in the day. What about you?
Awesome. Kind of in the same boat, where I don't really remember my first ever introduction of Superman, because when I was a kid, I kind of just like I I liked Batman, but I never read anything about Batman when I was a kid. I just liked him because I thought he was cool.
He's
I
cool.
do remember. I think I did watch one of his animated series, not the Batman the animated series, but I think it was one of them. I forget which one, but I really liked Batman. Superman as a kid, I didn't really like as much. But my first ever like when I the first time I remember consuming like something Superman, I really liked it was watching Man of Steel. Um, that was basically the funny enough. That was my introduction to like the world of comic books,
Yeah,
essentially. Because when I watched it, I loved the movie, and I still do. I still do to this day. Uh, Controversial opinion. I do love Man of Steel. I think it's one of my. It is top three comic movies of all time for me. That could be
I
a
think
very
so.
good hot take.
I think it's
Um,
in my top three too.
yeah, there you go. Awesome. So if you guys think otherwise, then you're wrong. um, but it's funny because I loved it so much to the point where I watched it twice in theaters in the United States, and I was visiting my family in Colombia, and and there are options for movies where you can watch it in either Spanish or English with Spanish subtitles, and they only had it Man of Steel just plainly in Spanish. So and as a kid, my Spanish wasn't the best, and I was like, I'm gonna go see it. And it's like, are you sure? Because you don't know, you can barely understand it. And I was like, I still want to see it. And so I still saw it twice in the in the theaters in Colombia, where my family's from. And they typically in Colombia, there's always these carts of bootleg movies they sell on the street. And I saw Man of Steel was on there. I was like, let's get it. But it was terrible quality. It was literally dark. I couldn't see anything. It was dark all the time. And I was next to my cousin, and she just kept asking a lot of questions. Not because she was genuinely curious,
Just
but
couldn't
just to
see.
annoy me.
Oh,
She just to annoy me. And I was like, all right, I'm just like not gonna watch anymore. But then after all that, I did went to my little comic shop, and I did pick up two comics. It was my first one was Batman Hush, and
okay.
then I got Superman Unchained. It was a New 52 Jim Lee, Scott Snyder Superman story that I have yet to reread since the first time I read it. I think at this point 10 years ago. Damn. Oh, I feel old. Okay.
So those are your first two comics you got because of Man of Steel, Batman
Yeah,
Hush, Superman Unchained.
yeah, and like what I, it's funny enough with how like Superman's like the the catalyst of what it is right what I am right now of like loving comic books, loving to collect comic books, doing this podcast and like everything because beforehand I was kind of nervous of doing all like doing anything with comic books because there's like that trope of like, if you like comic books and you're a nerd, you're a
Yeah.
loser, whatever. And and then I had this crush in high in during that time, and I was kind of like skeptical to like talk about it because I don't know if she would be put off by it, but I was like, yeah, yeah, screw it, let's do it. And then it was fine, whatever. So it kind of just give me like the more like courage to like do what I want to do without being afraid to hide it, essentially. And I feel like it's ironic because it was Superman, seeing a Superman movie that made me feel that way. So I thought it's pretty nice. I did like Superman Unchained from when I first read it. Then again, I did like Batman Hush when I first read it,
You
and
don't like it
read.
anymore.
I don't. I really don't. I really don't. Whenever I see someone saying Hush is top five, I'm like, it's not. It's really not. It's not good.
I haven't
The
read it yet.
the artwork's good because it's Jim Lee artwork, but the story.
Ooh, we got to read it on the podcast now. We got to. Now we have to.
Yeah, we have to now. But yeah, that's kind of my thing with Superman and how it brought me to what it is right now.
To bounce off what you said, kind of um, like I said, I grew up with Superman, but the one that got me into comics and why I am today is Spider-Man. But as like a person, even though Spider-Man is and will always be my favorite character ever, Superman has probably inspired me as a person more than any other character.
Yeah,
He's my number 2 favorite hero, but still, he's like, as far as like inspiring me and just like in a lot of different ways, it's definitely like he's, like you said in your tweet yesterday, like just it's hope. Like he's just a
yeah,
very hopeful character. Um, I haven't read as many Superman comics as I would have liked to have read,
right.
but that doesn't really matter to me because he's just like that's just who he is as a character. He's hopeful. Even like in just DCeased, like I said, in those when he's like talking to as he's about to die to like his loved ones, it's just like super inspiring, super hopeful. Um, he's a great character. But what are some of these Superman comics that you've read that are your favorites? What are your favorite Superman comics you've read?
All right. So, I did. I used to read Superman, not like in like his like own series, but like just like where he's like featured in it, like Batman Superman by Ed McGuinness, Justice League, stuff like that. And I just only recently started reading like Superman centered stories. One I read this one recently and I really liked it. I know I talked about it on the previous episode, but it's Man of Steel by John Byrne.
I want to read that so bad.
That one, maybe, I feel like, because I only read volume one of that. So that Man of Steel by John Byrne and like All Star Superman's like right there. They're like neck and neck on at my favorites because All Star Superman is it's fantastic. It's like a love letter to Superman in general,
Yeah.
and the animated movie does it justice. It's really good as well. But just I really like 80s, 90s comic storylines, and reading John Byrne's Superman run is something that I really like, and I really hope to see James Gunn pull some kind of inspiration from, because he's hopeful in this story, but he still has his like he's still troubled by like what he is, and in this volume it kind of begins with him trying to figure out like who he is and like how to deal with it. So I feel like that's my favorite Superman comic book. Another one that I read was Superman Brainiac, which was really good. Superman Secret Origin was also very good. I liked it a lot. But if I had to choose a top three, it'll definitely be Man of Steel by John Byrne, All Star Superman by Grant Morrison, Frank Quietly, and I'd go with Superman's Secret Origin as number three. Jeff Johns, Gary Frank.
All right. All right. Yeah, have I really need to read more Superman, but I recently read the first trade. There's a new Action Comics. I think it's already just finished up run where he's off world.
Hmm.
I read the first trade. It was really good. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it was a really good read. Um, my favorites are also Superman/Batman with Loeb McGinnis. Um, I just recently bought. What's the name? Superman Birthright. Superman Birthright. I bought.
Oh, okay.
This was a huge impulse buy. It's Superman Birthright Deluxe Edition by Mark Waid. I saw Superman,
Mm,
I saw Mark Waid, and I bought the deluxe edition. I
yeah.
know the only thing I know about it is that it's a I feel like we get a lot of these, but it's a reimagining of his origin. Um, but it's got one of my favorite characters and one of my favorite writers, so I bought that. I've read a good chunk of the Death of Superman. I've read the main, part of it. I've read a little bit of the afterwards stuff. That's just a classic. I'd put that in my top 3. I pre-ordered, haven't read it yet, but it has my favorite artist of all time, and it's Superman, so I have to get it. It's the absolute edition of Superman for All Seasons with
Oh, okay.
Tim Sale.
Hmm.
He's my favorite artist ever, and I've seen a lot of the artwork in it. I've heard great things about it. That's like my number one story I want to read for Superman. But
Yeah.
um yeah, so I mean, I guess my favorites right now is Superman/Batman, All-Star Superman, and The Death of Superman. Those are my favorite stories. I love him in the New 52 Justice League. It's probably not my favorite like version of him, but I
Yeah.
still think he's great there. Like I still love that version of Superman.
Yeah. I did you read I think was it either just like the main Superman run or the Action Comics run from the New 52?
I have looked into it and it looks like I wouldn't like it. So
You would not. It's
it's Grant
it's
Morrison, pretty sure.
it is. I think what was it? It was Action Comics. That's Grant Morrison and George Perez for the regular run. I think. I don't know. I know those were the main two on Superman for New 52. I read the first volume of both this main Superman run and the Action Comics run. Um, the one with George Perez, I did not like at all. I didn't like it at all. Same thing with the Grant Morrison one, and I kind of looked into it like a little bit more, and the writers themselves were like very conflicted about writing what they were writing because, in a sense, they had to write corresponding to like the other title, but like they weren't told what happened in the title.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for them, and then they themselves said, "I'm I might be remembering this wrong, so if just take this with a grain of salt." But I'm pretty sure this is what they said, that how like, it was difficult to work under those circumstances because they weren't really writing what they wanted to write essentially, and you can see that from both of the series. And I didn't like any like either run, which sucks because I was really looking forward to it because it's like you said, it's Grant Morrison. It must have been good, but
Yeah, he
it
wrote
kind of
All-Star
suffered.
Superman, so
Yeah, so it kind of suffered in that sense. But I really want to read Death of Superman because I think I have it. Where he dies, the key issue where he dies. And since it takes place in the '90s, Superman, it's up my alley, you know.
yeah, the
Uh,
main event I've read multiple times. It's a classic,
yeah,
there's not much more to say about it. The stuff that comes after I've it's spotty with what I've read. It gets a little wacky,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like 90s. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to read. I'm
yeah,
not going to say it's like the greatest thing, but
definitely, yeah. Because I think I have I think I have the first full appearance of the Eradicator, which was one of like the Superman clones that emerged from Death of Superman.
yeah.
Um,
Have you seen the Superman animated series? The
I've seen the first 8 episodes. I want to say, I just it's kind of like weird because I did really like it, especially how like there's episodes dedicated on Krypton, and I just like it. I just like it when there's like a focus on Krypton before it blows up. That's kind of like one of like my favorite parts in Man of Steel, where like they focus on before the explosion of Krypton.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to pick it up again because I'm watching Justice League animated series right now, and I keep seeing clips of the Superman animated series, and I'm like, I have to like start watching it again, and I might have to because right now I'm on a Superman high right now, ever since obviously Superman Day and like everything I read beforehand, like John Byrne Superman, all that stuff, and I just have a list. I already have a list of Superman's comic books I want to read after Annihilation Conquest. So I'm excited for that. But yeah,
Everyone talks about the Batman animated series, and rightfully so. It's like one of the best things ever. But Superman animated series is right there with it.
it's underrated.
It's so good. It's like if the Batman animated series is a 10 out of 10, I would say Superman's a 9 out of 10. Like
Yeah,
it's right there with it.
definitely. I wanted to ask this other question. Do you want to talk about like the favorite artist who drew Superman now, or
Oh,
you want
yeah,
to do
yeah, yeah.
something?
Let's do it.
All right.
This is an image. I'll put it up on screen that you shared on a couple of different social medias,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of different artists' takes on Superman. And yeah, which ones do you love? I don't think I hate any of them, but which ones are your favorites?
So it's a pretty big list. There's like 16 artists. Obviously, it doesn't encapsulate all the artists who ever worked on Superman. Like you said, I did post it on my TikTok. I posted on my Twitter, and I also posted it on the Comics Around the World TikTok and Twitter. Comics RTW if you're not already following. But a lot of people, I'll give the general consensus from people.
Okay.
A lot of people said I think the main one was Jim Lee. The main artist that they liked was Jim Lee. Then it was Alex Ross. Then I think it was, I want to say it was Frank Quietly. That was the third one. So those were like the big three that a lot of people said. Let me just double check here. Yeah, so
None of
it's
those are in my top 3.
yeah, me neither. Yeah, a lot of people said Alex Ross, Jim Lee. Those were and Gary Frank. Those were the top three: Alex Ross, Jim Lee, and Gary Frank. Um, I don't have those in my top three. I have a pretty distinctly different top three. Do you want to share yours first?
Yeah, if I was to give an honorable mention, like a number 4, I'd say it's George Perez. He would be probably like my number 4. My number 3 would be Tim Sale. I didn't see his in any list, and it made me angry because he's just my favorite artist ever.
Yeah.
Period. My number 2, which I definitely didn't see in anybody's list, and I even thought about putting him number 1, but it's Ed McGuinness. I
Okay.
love Ed McGuinness as Superman. I don't know if I'm really putting it to my personal bias. He kind of is my number 1. I love that his Superman. But number 1 without a doubt, and I haven't even read, like the Man of Steel that you're talking about by John Byrne, but it's John Byrne's Superman.
Yes.
It's just like
Yes.
when I go into an LCS and I'm flipping through Superman comics, like I've literally got one right here. This is one of my favorite covers of all time. Never read it, never anything, but like
Mm.
I just love that's just Superman. You know what I mean? Like there's no other way to put it. That is Superman.
That's
John
the
Byrne's
correct
Superman.
answer. The correct answer.
It kind of is the correct answer. Like I said, Ed McGuinness may be my personal favorite, but I still can't put him ahead of John Byrne's Superman.
Yeah. My top three. So I'm gonna do an honorable mention. I would go with Dan Jurgens, Superman, as
Okay,
my honorable
I like
mention.
that.
Number three, I'm gonna put Jorge Jimenez, a more
That's a
recent artist, but he's still one of my favorite artists. I just
dude.
love his artwork a lot.
100% agree. Great choice.
Um, number number two, I'm gonna have to put George Perez, Superman, on number two. And obviously, number one has to be Frank Miller's Superman. Just kidding, no. John Byrne's Superman from the Man of Steel, and just John Byrne's Superman as a whole. It just encapsulates, especially visually, what Superman is whenever I hear the name of Superman. And it's just, you know, ideal, perfect Superman, in my opinion.
I agree. I'll give a little bit of a hot take here. Actually, this is kind of probably a major hot take.
Oh, God.
One of I don't know who would be dead last, but one that would be at the bottom of my list would be Frank Quietly's Superman. One,
Really?
yeah, my least favorite thing, and I don't even think it's bad, but my least favorite thing about All Star Superman is the art. I don't think it's bad art. I recently was checking out Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly's X-Men.
Hmm.
I think it's all new X-Men. I like his art there way more. All-Star Superman, it's kind of the faces sometimes in All-Star Superman I think are weird. I can't exactly describe it, but and it's sometimes it's Superman himself, but it's not bad. It's really great art objectively, but it's not really my favorite art.
Yeah, now that you mention it, do know that a lot of people, it's very split with Frank Quietly's artwork. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. So I do understand where you're coming from, because I know there are parts of both New X-Men and All Star Superman where, like, the wrinkles especially
It's a good, yeah.
is it's like a little overdone. Some
It
it just makes it look like a I don't want to be crude, but it makes it look like a ball sack, essentially.
sometimes like I think in the All-Star Superman the eyes are too small and the
Hmm.
mouth will look weird. It's tough to describe, but if you look at it, hopefully I don't ruin his art for you now and you look at his art differently, but art is subjective. I don't know. For
Yeah.
everyone it's so wildly different. But I mean, I wouldn't say there's any bad Superman in this whole list.
Yeah, good
Like
thing Frank Miller's not on here or anything.
I think every Superman here is pretty good.
Definitely. Um Speaking of which, did you want to talk about we talked about the Superman in the comics and like who drew him best. What what do you think is your favorite interpretation of Superman in sense of Superman animated series? 'Cause it's that old school Superman, and then there's Superman the animated series design, and then the current or the not yet released uh, Superman animated series design.
96. I mean, it's not even. I mean, it's that. I was just talking about it, so I mean, I guess that's obvious. But like
Yeah,
from Superman animated series to Justice League animated series, it's that Superman. Just the
yeah.
not only the S but the whole suit. I will say I don't know if anyone said this yet, and I'm not saying this as an insult, but the
Okay.
new Superman looks very inspired by Invincible, in my opinion.
I see where you're coming from now, actually.
I just all of him. The face, just like the
Yeah,
animation style, the
yeah, I see
suit
it now.
the suit kind of like well not really the suit, but
It's
I
like
don't
the
know,
the way like move essentially is very Invincible esque in a sense.
which is not an insult at all.
Yeah.
I love Invincible. So,
I
which
mean,
one's your favorite?
as much. as much as I love the 96, it's so good, but there's something about the 41 suit, 1941 Fletcher suit
That
that
S. You like
yeah,
that?
I don't know, there's something about it. I just really like it. It's I don't know. It's like I think it's the S or like just the way it's like he's like designed
Okay.
just like makes me draw to that design more. Still, but like 41, 96, top tier. Both are still top tier, but something about the 41 suit that just makes it a little bit more preferable to me.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah. I don't agree, but but I'm not going to get angry about that. I think they're all pretty good. I think they're all pretty
Alrighty.
good.
All right. I just thought this on a whim. What is your least favorite interpretation of Superman?
I don't know. I have heavy, heavy, heavy nostalgia with Superman Returns.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the actor's name.
Brendan Routh.
Brendan Ro- He might. I need to rewatch the Christopher Reeves movie. I've only seen Superman Part One like once, maybe, and I
Right.
don't remember liking it. But it's been like ages, and I feel I don't know who I would say is my least favorite Superman. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could say the Injustice Superman, but I also I love the Injustice Superman. I was just saying like that because I hate how now people just think that's who Superman is. Like
Yeah.
we've kind of run with that idea a little too far, but I love the Injustice Superman. I think it's a really cool take. I don't know. I can't say least favorite. Can you?
Yes.
Oh.
It's the Injustice Superman.
Wait, like are you saying okay, explain.
is I don't know how to like it's just something like I get how I was re watching like clips of like the storyline for the first Injustice game and just remembering um from what I read in the Injustice comic series, which I like, but towards they're like divided into like books essentially. It's like book 1 through 5. Book 3 and 4 took a massive dip in quality, in my opinion, because they just got super involved with like the Greek gods, like higher like godlike beings, like the Spectre, like comes and intervenes, and it feels like like it feels like stupid. And I remember there was a fight between Trigon and Mister. Am I being this right? Mister Mixis Pitalik, the little it's like an interdimensional. Do you know who Batmite is?
I know who Batmite is, yeah.
It's basically Batmite, but like a Superman villain.
Okay.
He can like reality warps and like all like crazy stuff. Like he's like a ninth, 10th dimensional being or whatever, and it just gets really out of over the top. And just to go back to more like why I don't like the Injustice Superman, it's like I just like his characterization. Yeah, what happened to him was like super like traumatizing and tragic, him being responsible for the death of Lois and their unborn child, as well as the destruction of Metropolis. It just feels like it doesn't really seem like Superman in a sense. If you understand what I'm trying to say, like I know, like they're trying to make a reason for an evil Superman, but like, and you understand that part in the beginning, but like at least in the Injustice comics, the more you read more and more of it, in my opinion, there's so many ways out that he can like take back everything and like stop what he's doing, but like he just continues to do what he wants to do just for the sake of him trying to be evil in a sense.
Yeah, I haven't read the comics. I never was interested in them, but I love both games. I really like I like him in a vacuum in that story. Like I don't like how much he's that version of Superman has like now everyone wants Superman to be evil, it seems like. I hate the effect those games have had and those
Yeah.
stories had.
Yeah.
But in a vacuum, I love just like the Superman regime, and like I think it's really, really, really cool in those games, and especially the first one. Like the first
Yeah.
game's story is just awesome, I think. But I do agree. Like if I was to say an answer, I'd say Injustice Superman because of the effect he's had on Superman as a character. It feels like
Yeah, definitely. I
everyone just wants
agree.
him to be evil.
I totally agree. I kind of want to bounce off of evil Superman and kind of like the cascading effect that that game had with like creating new superheroes. In your opinion, who do you think is your favorite Superman copy? And what I mean by that is like either like Homelander, Omni Man, uh, those type of characters who like are like based on Superman, but like obviously aren't Superman.
Easily Omni Man, but Homelander is so damn great in The Boys.
Yeah,
Like it's still easily Omni Man for me. Like having read all of Invincible, but I mean they're definitely the top two. I don't even think anyone could come close to those two for me as far as like I haven't seen that movie Brightburn. I
hmm
know that that's supposed to kind of be like if Superman. I almost like that more if like he was raised differently as a kid and then became evil. I think that's really interesting. Like, what if instead of I haven't seen the movie, but I'm just thinking in my head, what if it wouldn't have been mom and pa Kemp? What if it would have been like some abusive parents or like that would be really interesting to see. But definitely those two. What about you?
Um, I'll definitely have to say, comics wise, between the boys and Invincible, definitely Omni Man. Because in the boys comic series, at least, Homelander is just
I heard the comics suck.
yeah. I haven't read them, but I did hear that they suck. Um, there are like parts of it where like it's like very like extremely violent just to be violent in a sense, just for like shock factor in a sense, and essentially like that. So I definitely say Omni Man just because of his whole character arc, where especially in spoilers for Invincible. So if you guys don't want to hear anything, like, Invincible spoilers. Um, just the fact how you think he's so irredeemable, yet he still gets redeemed at the end.
Yeah.
It's just great character progress, and especially when like you don't see Omni Man for for a little bit, and then Mark just lands on this planet, and then he sees on that Omni Man's like the ruler of that planet and has a son, or a kid. I mean, well, same thing. Um, that just brings like a whole different layer of complexity to the character. So I do will have to also have to say Omni Man.
Yeah. I mean, I know we both read Invincible, so I just think that's such like if you've just seen Invincible season one, he he becomes such a different character. Like it's not just like a sudden change. He's at such a I mean that whole comic. It's just so good.
It's good. It's
Everything's
really
so good.
good.
The last thing I have to talk about Superman wise is I want a Superman video game. And
Yeah.
I've been wanting this so bad for so long. I have pretty much the whole synopsis in my head, how the game would go. Um I like dude, I'm serious. I have thought this out
Okay.
because I've heard so many idiots that say, that say that making a Superman game is impossible and it can't be fun. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. Um, so how I would do it, first of all, the camera angle would kind of be like it wouldn't be like gameplay similar, but camera angle would be like almost like Breath of the Wild or Dark Souls, where it's like further back, uh, characters in the center. The game would start out with Brainiac um, taking over Earth, and like it's in the middle of happening. And what would happen is, it would kind of teach you how to play the game, and you would just be annihilating like Brainiac bots or whatever the hell they're called. You would just be destroying them, just punching through them. Like they can't even touch you. Um, Then you would do a boss fight with Brainiac himself, teach you how to do like boss fights in the game. You would defeat him. Superman saves the day, and I don't know the specifics of what would happen next, but I would want you to be almost never on Earth the whole game.
Hmm.
After that, there's some kind of threat in the cosmos. You fly off into space. That way, wherever you go, he wouldn't need to be, because everyone's always like, oh, well, he's too overpowered. Like, so that way, in the beginning of the game, you would be overpowered. You would just be destroying everything in
Yeah.
your sight. But you could go somewhere in the cosmos where Superman would be, a bit more on. He would still be more powerful than, but that way you could still get beat in fights. Like if you take damage, it makes sense. Um, that's how I think you should do it. He doesn't have to be on Earth, because if he is, yeah, you can't really stop him.
Right.
He's just gonna kill everything.
Hey, man, I like the idea. So hopefully it does pan out. We do get a Superman game, or a good Superman game, because the Superman game that always comes into mind is Superman 64, for the N64, and how terrible it was, especially just flying through rings almost the whole
Yeah,
game.
I've got. Let me grab it. Got Superman, the Man of Steel on Xbox right here.
Oh damn! Okay.
And then I remember my first game I ever got from an Xbox 360 was the Superman Returns movie video game. And in that game, you aren't on Earth a good bit. I Objectively, it's a bad game, but I was obsessed. I was obsessed with that game
Yeah.
um, when I first got it, because I was young. I didn't care. Bad
Right.
games were good back then.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Definitely.
Um,
Um, I do have this one little fun fact about me and Superman, and just to be blunt, I was pretty stupid when I was a kid. I was pretty stupid.
I was
I
too.
whenever it's funny because I actually got in an argument with my friends about this, and now looking in hindsight, I cringe at the fact that I truly believed what I believed, and it's just so stupid. Um, so when Man of Steel was coming out, I was under the impression that Superman himself was made out of steel. that's what he called. That's what he's called, the Man of Steel. And I got arguing with my friends like, because he's been reading comics more than I have, essentially. Like he's like always been the one to invite me to the comic store. So he obviously has experience with like the fact that Superman it's not literally made out of steel. And I got into an argument with him saying that like Superman's it's Man of Steel because why would he be called the Man of Steel if he's not made of steel? And I'm like, I was like, and he was like, no, that's just his name. And I'm like, no, it's because he's made of steel. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I was like, and I always think about it. I'm like, oh, what a idiotic thing to say. It was so stupid.
I bet there's been tons of kids that have. I mean, it's his common nickname.
I hope I hope I'm not the only one here.
There's no way you're the only one. That's definitely got to be. There's definitely got to be some other kids out there.
I have fingers crossed. But lastly, before we end off the episode, I kind of want to talk about James Gunn did post a picture about him being completed with. He finished the script for Superman Legacy, and he did drop some tidbits about how Jimmy Olsen is going to be in the movie. I might be wrong on this part, but Crypto the Superdog might be in the movie too. It might be a rumor. I don't know. I hope Crypto's in it. That'd be cool. I'm interested to see how that plays out because we also are getting a Supergirl in the Flash this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited to see that. And from the trailers, she looks pretty cool, pretty badass. So I wonder if she's still gonna be integrated with the new DCEU or DCU, I mean, or if they're just gonna go do clean slate. Because even though it's a completely different actress playing Supergirl, she still has the costume of Henry Cavill,
Yeah.
Superman. same style and everything. So I'm wondering if, depending on how successful the Flash is and how the people respond to her performance as Supergirl, who knows? But what are you expecting? What do you hope for? And what do you wish wouldn't, or what do you wish isn't going to be implemented in the new Superman movie?
I don't know. I'm glad Jimmy Olsen's there for sure. Um, I have a hard time like saying what I want to see. I have a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth because of Henry Cavill, but at the same time, I hope he's taken inspiration from All Star Superman. I hope it's just a very hopeful story. I hope that we get a good casting of Superman. I don't know like specifically anything I want to see. I just hope he nails it for the sake of his new slate, because if this
Yeah.
movie isn't good, like it's
Then the
kind of
whole
like, yeah,
it's like
it's
the thing that needs to be good.
it's not all riding on this movie, but it's close to it. Like
Yeah.
it really has to be a good Superman movie to for his like DCU, I think he's calling it, to
Hmm.
be a good to be a hit.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping for the villain. I I don't. I'm not gonna say Lex Luthor because at this point he's been done. He's been done for Christopher Reeve Superman. He's been done for Brendan Routh Superman. He's been basically done for Henry Cavill Superman. So I kind of want a new villain, and I feel like Parasite would be an interesting villain for Superman to start off at. Do you know anything about Parasite?
I know of, but not super well.
Basically, he absorbs whatever he touches. So if he touches, or if someone touches him, he will like, absorb his powers. So and like weaken Superman. So that'll be an interesting way for Superman to fight his first fight. Essentially, it could be either that or Metallo, because I know they were going to do Metallo for Batman versus Superman in the early drafts. Which I wish they would have gone because it would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Um, but it would also be interesting to see Metallo. Um, but yeah, those are my hopes. I hope it's really good. I hope it's hopeful, like you said. I hope it's like what John Byrne's run of Superman is, or
Yeah.
at least in any sense of that. Maybe All Star Superman without the fact that Superman dies at the end. Obviously,
Yeah. A lot of people, I feel like it feels like very trend hoppy to just say All Star Superman. I get why he's like basing it off of that, but I hear a lot of people saying that, and I'm like, yeah, but have you read it? Because like you said, he dies. He's literally dying in it. I think when James Gunn says that, he more means like the essence of
yeah,
Superman in that story. And as much as we both loved Henry Cavill's Superman, and it's a bit of a darker take, and I loved that.
yeah, me too.
And even though it's a darker take, I still think Man of Steel is a really hopeful movie. Not a lot of people agree, but I think it's still incredibly
Yeah,
hopeful. But I do hope that this version of Superman is just kind of the more, like bright
the
version
Boy
of Superman.
Scout
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. I do hope we get that here, because we've gotten Henry Cavill's, that's done with. So I hope it does take those essences from All-Star Superman and other stories.
I definitely agree, and I totally forgot that they're also making a Supergirl movie as well, or a series on HBO Max or something like that, based on Tom King's story on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, I think it's called. Just kind of to bounce back onto the Supergirl and Flashpoint, I'm wondering if they're gonna if they thought about using her in this story, because I haven't read the story from by Tom King. It is something that I plan on reading sometime in the future. But it's just like the fact of because we technically already have like two Supergirls, the one from the CW and also the one from the Flash, essentially. So I don't know if they want to go on a new route and cast a whole new Supergirl or keep the same Supergirl, transition her from DCU to DCU. But I guess we'll see. I do want to read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. It looks really cool. It won a lot of awards,
Yeah.
and obviously it must be good to be adapted to a movie or show when it came out, like not even like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Very
So
recent.
yeah. So that's my hope. And if do you have anything else to say about today's Superman DCeased episode?
Nothing about any of that, but I will say, as soon as this wraps up, I'm gonna make a TikTok about it. We are announcing the giveaway winner today
That
for
is true.
a Star Wars omnibus. We're gonna be announcing the winner. If you do not win, do not worry. We are going to be doing giveaways a lot,
Yeah.
especially now that I talked about it. Or no, I didn't talk about it. Especially now that I'm getting rid of a lot of omnibuses. I'm going to be giving pretty much all of them away. So I'm almost going to be constantly running giveaways. So if you didn't win, don't worry. I don't know what the next one's going to be yet. Maybe I don't think I have any Superman stuff to give away. I think I'm keeping it all. So I don't think it can be a Superman. Oh wait, that is the next thing I'm going to give away. I do have something Superman to give away.
Okay.
So it'll be the Superman red and blue hardcover. I'm going to give that away. I'm going to announce that
Okay, cool.
on a TikTok. If you want to enter that giveaway, be sure to follow our TikTok and leave a comment on that video. That's going to be the rules. Just follow and leave a comment. And yeah.
Awesome. And with that being said, that is the end of today's episode. We covered DCeased objectively, both of us. Really good story. Superman, great hero. If I'm gonna say, like, objectively speaking, he is the best superhero of all time.
I agree. I agree with that statement.
Some might say the second might be Batman or Spider-Man, but I mean, overall, Superman is the superhero when you think of the word superhero.
He is the superhero. I agree.
Yeah,
I think he's the best objectively.
definitely. With that being said, that is the end of our episode. Make sure you follow our TikTok and Twitter page at ComicsRTW. Where can they find you on the internet?
Woody307 is my Twitch. I'm gonna get back to streaming Dark Souls 3 in the next couple days, and just follow our Twitter and TikTok. They're both ComicsRTW.
Indeed. And you guys can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and on Twitter at Orion Scott Comics. And with that being said, make sure to keep reading comic books. Be on the lookout for the giveaway. We'll be announcing that on our TikTok, so make sure to like, comment, and follow. And with that being said, guys, remember that comics run the world, and have a good day.